Welcome. This presentation outlines the lead level contamination of the Freedom Lots in the Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, as shown by an assessment conducted on April 11, 2022 by Chelsea Chobany and Eve Plotka. On April 11, 2022, a lead assessment was conducted on the soil in the Freedom Lots of the Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York. Located on the northeast side of the cemetery, this piece of land abuts both Orchard Avenue and 37th Street. 8 soil samples plus a reference were collected and subsequently analyzed with an XRF. An analysis revealed that while some samples had higher levels of lead, the content of all samples fell within acceptable limits. Based on these results, no remediation is needed. In this presentation, we will discuss the scope of work and purpose for the assessment, background on the potential hazard, a description of the site where the assessment was conducted, the methods used to conduct the assessment, as well as the results and overall conclusions.
Chelsea and I decided to test the Greenwood Cemetery, specifically the Freedom Lots, on April 11th, 2022, on a day that is no less than 2 days after the last rainfall, as rainwater in our soil samples could affect the results. Some limitations that we feel have to be addressed was firstly that new soil was deposited in some of the lots in 2017 in order to resurface them. So these new soiled lots would be less likely to contain lead. And lastly, in that we needed to be considerate of the cemetery and those buried. So the areas that we were able to test were limited to areas without plants or grass necessarily right there, so we didn't disturb any of the memorialization of the people buried.
The main hazard of interest during the Freedom Lot assessment was lead. Lead is a naturally occurring element found in small amounts in the Earth's crust. While it has some beneficial uses, it can be toxic to humans and animals, causing numerous health effects, including speech, language, and behavior problems, kidney damage, digestive problems, and decreased mental ability or learning difficulties. Lead can be found in all parts of our environment: the air, the soil, the water, and even inside our homes. Much of our exposure comes from human activities such as the past use of fossil fuels, i.e. leaded gasoline, and the past use of lead-based paint in homes. In our homes, lead and lead compounds have been used in a wide variety of products, including ceramics, plumbing materials, solders, batteries, ammunition, and cosmetics. Lead may be emitted into the environment from industrial sources and contaminated sites, such as former lead smelters. Lead released from industrial sources or spark ignition engine aircraft may travel long distances before settling to the ground, where it usually sticks to soil particles. Once in the soil, lead can potentially move into groundwater, depending on the type of lead compound and the characteristics of the soil. The Freedom Lots are located in the northeast corner of Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York, nestled between Orchard Avenue and 37th Street. On the date of collection, the weather was a sunny 58 degrees with a high of 60, a low of 48, and 33% humidity. The Freedom Lots is a collective term for 7 lots, lots 88, 3412, 3413, 3414, 7472, 9464, and 9932, which were historic burial spaces for African American adults and children in the 19th century. Because of the prevalence of racial segregation at the time, even in cemeteries, these lots were left vastly untouched and neglected. It wasn't until the summer of 2017 that the Greenwood Cemetery, in partnership with the New York City Department of Education and World Monuments Fund, worked to restore the lots, unearthing, cataloging, and repairing, if possible, sunken and dilapidated gravestones.
Our methodology for conducting our soil testing follows the ASTM E1727-20 standards, or the standard practice for field collection of soil samples for subsequent lead determination. So we tested the soil in the Freedom Lots as aforementioned, and we conducted a visual assessment of the area to avoid areas that we already knew were inlaid with new soil and areas with grass. We used plastic spoons to gather the sample They were then stored in plastic baggies that were filled halfway. The EPA standard for lead is 1,200 ppm in a non-child play area.
After collection, each of the samples were tested with an XRF, the results of which are laid out in the table. All samples had varying levels of manganese, iron, copper, zinc, rubidium, and strontium. All samples were also positive for lead, with levels ranging from 52 parts per million in sample number 4 to 132 parts per million in the reference sample. Interestingly, sample number 5 also contained low levels of both arsenic, also present in the reference sample, and thorium, a naturally occurring radioactive metal. Another unique result was the 68 parts per million of nickel found in sample number 6. However, as none of the observed values exceeded the deviation from the standard, none are statistically significant. This map highlights the collection time, location, and lead concentration of each of the 9 soil samples taken within the 7 lots.
We think it's important to discuss not only the presence of lead, but also the presence of other chemicals that we found in our results. This includes arsenic, which could be a sign of pesticide use, the specific sample's proximity to plants, or underground water seepage from rainfall. Secondly, thorium, which was kind of surprising to both of us considering it's radioactive, but it could be present because of this specific sample's proximity to the road. But it also could be because of fragments of the granite monuments that are across the way in a different part of the cemetery lots. So this begs the question of how the results would have differed if we had sampled from the other lots that are full of granite monuments. And lastly, nickel, which could potentially be from just the soil as it is, or it could be from plant feed used to keep the plants as they are, memorializing the people buried there. When it comes to remediation, we do not think that remediation is needed. All of the lead values are well below the standards, and children are not playing in the cemetery, so there's not too much of a risk. Anyways, thank you all for listening. You can next take a look at our appendices.
Accompanying this presentation are 3 appendices. First, a map of Greenwood Cemetery and the Freedom Lots. 2, images of sample sites 1 through 4. And 3, images of sample sites 5 through 8.